It feels good to finally say this, but Seattle, welcome to the NHL officially. Congratulations on just drafting your inaugural team, or at least your inaugural players from the Seattle expansion draft that just occurred. And let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, it was very interesting nonetheless, because a lot of people would say this was a boring draft, an unexpected draft, to the extent that not a lot of big guys that were predicted to go for a very long time, for example, guys like Philly, Van Riemsdyk, a big example there, and other types of names did not go in the expansion draft. Carey Price is a Habs still, Tarasenko is still on the Blues, and a lot more names stayed the way they are. And this team honestly looks very interesting. I don't want to dwell on the past and the guys that didn't get selected, because there are going to be thousands of videos talking about why this and that, and all the types of trades that are going to be coming out at 1 o'clock tomorrow Eastern time. They'll be announcing all the trades that happened. So there have been trades that have went down between GM of other teams and Ron Francis with the Kraken. So we'll be seeing all that information come out slowly or fast, depending on how the NHL is really going to release it tomorrow around 1 o'clock. Obviously, a little bit earlier for me in the Pacific and everybody else around the world with the different time zones. But the point being, I want to talk about the identity of this Kraken team moving forward. Because personally, if I was the GM of the Seattle Kraken, I'm Ron Francis, and I'm drafting a team, I'm going very similar to the route that he did. Maybe I'm not taking some other guys, if the trades coming in that we don't know about and how that works. So this is all, before all that comes out. But I still want to give my first initial thoughts on this expansion team, because, be frank, I really like the way it looks. A lot of people are going to be saying, not a lot of big stars off of the bat, and you're definitely right there. When you look at the big differences between Vegas and Seattle, just off of their expansion draft, Vegas had a lot more big names just drafted already. When you just look up at the star power that they would have. Obviously, Fleury being drafted is huge. And then you get Riley Smith, Jonathan Marchessault, two big names having pretty good years. Obviously, Smith was on a little bit of a downslide that year, but still getting two really reliable top six guys from the same team, huge. Those are three guys alone, not to mention Shea Theodore, a top prospect league-wide, coming over to you and having a fantastic season as a full-time NHLer the year after, and the list goes on. There were so many great moves that were made by George McPhee of the Vegas Golden Knights when that deal went down with other teams, and he did a great job of assessing the talent and assessing how desperate these teams were. And then when you look at this year's draft with the Seattle Kraken, it was very different. Not a lot of teams trading, even though there will be some announced tomorrow, like I just said. Still not going to be as many big deals that we saw compared to what Vegas had. But when you look at the players they drafted a very hardworking, defensive-minded team. Their forwards obviously do have some, lack of firepower and big names, but I have a lot of respect for the guys that they took. And the defense, which we'll get to, is, I think, incredible, because the defense they were able to assemble just off of the expansion draft looks like probably better than half of what the NHL teams already have currently on their roster for signed defensemen. So we'll get to all of those guys, but I want us to talk about the offense, because the big names that obviously you want to hear me talk about are Eberle. I would say Brendan Tanev from Pittsburgh. Another good example would be Yanni Gourde, who obviously will be missing some time with an injury that has just been announced, but still a big selection from that back-to-back team in Tampa with those cup wins. Another really good player that I think is a lot of people are kind of sleeping on to an extent is Joonas Donskoi out of the Colorado Avalanche, a really reliable right winger that can score some goals, 17 goals, 14 assists this past season. Very, very underrated winger, I feel like, who could really shine in a more given role. And then obviously some other really good names as well. Calle Järnkrok as well. 13 goals, 15 assists, 49 games played. I really like Järnkrok's development. I think he's going to become a really good guy for them. And that's the thing. They have a lot of good third liners that have room to grow. A prime example of this is Mason Appleton. This guy is obviously going to be much better than what a third liner was for the Winnipeg Jets, just based off of his production alone and how they expect him to grow. 12 goals, 13 assists, his best years ever as an NHLer, 56 games played as well. Very, very good year for Mason Appleton. Still 1 year left on that $900,000 cap hit. Really affordable player. A lot of guys like this they drafted in hopes that they'll be able to develop and grow them on a cheap cap hit and see what happens with them. And that's the way that I would build a team, because if you're not going to try to win it all right now, because let's be real, Seattle is not Vegas. Let's get that clear right now. They're a great team. They have made some pretty smart moves, but they're not that star power. They're not going to be competing for a cup, in my opinion, based off of this roster for the next season. They're going to be a good wild card team, I think, because of the potential that a lot of these players are going to be given compared to where they were this season with the teams and how much playing time they got. And I think they're going to get a lot of great development out of these guys personally. Again, like I said, Mason Appleton's a prime example from the Jets side of things, giving my perspective on it. I think he's going to have a great year with Seattle next year, and he's going to really blossom into a top six guy. I thought he has a top six potential already this season with the Jets potentially, but I definitely see that really oozing out of him next year, given a really good potential number one spot as a potential right winger or left winger, however they really want to use him in that top six next year. I definitely see Appleton being a really standout guy for them. But what I want to talk about now, obviously, is the defense, because the defense is insane. insanely good. Now, yes, you can obviously start off with the one negative that people are talking about, and that is the overpayment for Jamie Oleksiak, signing a $4.6 million deal for the next 5 years. Now, obviously, that seems like a little bit of a bigger contract for a guy, but let me remind you that Jamie Oleksiak has some really good defensive numbers. I'll show you your defensive stats on screen right now. His WAR is pretty good. Look at his even strength defensive numbers, a very good defender, and that's exactly what you need. So personally, if I had to grade Oleksiak and give him a contract as a GM, I would give him anywhere between $3.5 to $4 million for the next 3 to 4 years. So when you really compare what Ron Francis gave him, 4.6 for the next 5, yeah, it's a bit of an overpayment, but it's not one you can't live with. It's not going to handicap your team. I think it's a pretty decent signing, and I expect to see him really settle into that good second pairing spot with potentially the next guy we're going to be talking about, St. Louis's pick, Vince Dunn. Vince Dunn is already an awesome defenseman, a guy who honestly probably could be a top pairing guy as it stands right now, if not a very, very good second pairing defenseman, a guy that I really wanted to see the Jets go after, and a lot of other teams' fan bases wanted to see their teams go after and grab when St. Louis announced that he was on the board. Unfortunately, that didn't happen, and unfortunately for St. Louis fans, you end up losing him for nothing, which definitely stings, but nonetheless, when you have just that as your second pair, not even talking about our first pair potentially between Giordano and Adam Larsson, which again, Adam Larsson is on an insane contract. $4 million for the next 4 years is a steal, in my opinion, for Adam Larsson. He brings so much value to your team. He's a great two-way defender, and he just, again, great depth. Look how good that top four is. A top four of Giordano, Larsson, Dunn, and Oleksiak is awesome. Like, it really is. And then you have you got the Fleury brothers, great young guys coming up, not to mention potentially oh God, I'm drawing a blank on his name because I can't find it on my list. A guy from Detroit, Dennis Cholowski. God, I knew it was going to come back to me. Dennis Cholowski has potential to really develop into a good, solid third pairing guy. And there are so many prospects that they have that really look like they could become good, developed third, second pairing guys potentially, or good depth defensemen that you get for nothing. And I think it's a really good move by them. And they also load up on defense. A lot of teams are looking up for defense. They might trade one of those guys I potentially set out of their top four. We're going to have to wait and see. But I still think this team has a ton of potential to grow, like I said. A lot of these guys are not big name stars, and that's okay. What Francis is doing with his team right here is finding guys that are underappreciated, undervalued, and trying to turn them into stars and use their best area of their analytics and find that area where they can really grow and thrive on the Kraken. And I think there are going to be a lot of guys that are going to be able to do this next season. I really like the way the defense has been assembled. I really, really think they did a good job in that area. It's probably the best defense that I've seen assembled. This, like, when you think about it, by an expansion team in a long time, I think this is better than Vegas's even defense without any question. Giordano is just an amazing get, even at that age, to bring in that type of leadership and skill to your blue line, along with Larsson, along with Vince Dunn, and Jamie Oleksiak is great. I think you guys have a great defense there in Seattle, so definitely, your number one area that I think is your standout is your defense. I think your defense is going to be a strong point for you, but the other thing we need to talk about is goaltending. Obviously, we kind of knew that Chris Driedger was going to be that pick from Florida because he was announced to be signing that $3.5 million contract for the next 3 years, and because of that deal, I kind of had a feeling Carey Price was off the table because that's just way too much money to have in $14 million for the next 3 years in two goaltenders, especially if Carey Price doesn't play for them next year. Not worth bringing it and taking in that much cap. It's not worth the risk, and a smart decision there by Ron Francis is my opinion. Other than that, though, other than Driedger, not a lot of great goaltending picks. Obviously, a lot of guys that are really unproven that need some area to grow, and other than that, though, I think you could potentially go out and maybe get a free agent. I don't know there exactly. Goaltending is definitely a weak spot for me when I look at this team. There are a lot of guys that might be good, might develop into a decent backup, but you're also betting a lot on Chris Driedger being able to grow from the season he already had with Florida, and if he doesn't, or if he regresses, or whoever knows what happens there, you are really screwed, in my opinion, in the goaltending area. So I expect to see some tweaks being added through either trades or free agency upcoming into this offseason for the Kraken to address that goaltending a little bit more. Find a guy that they want for the price point they want, and bring him in to help maybe shore things up and make things a little bit more reliable. Other than that, though, when I look at this team, I see a very well-drafted, hard-working, defensive-minded team with a lot of analytics put into decisions, not to mention the fact that there are trades coming out tomorrow, which will be, who knows the type of capital they could be getting back for the players they didn't take. I'm really curious to see what Philadelphia did to make sure they didn't take Van Riemsdyk. I'm going to be, they potentially could have given up a first there. Who knows? It's going to be interesting to see what teams did, because when you look back on the last thing, I made a video talking about the last expansion draft about why you shouldn't trade with an expansion team. Example with the Winnipeg Jets, I always like to refer to, dropping back to protect Toby Enstrom and Marco Dano, and they lost out on Nick Suzuki. So not always a great move when you look in the future with hindsight, but then again, hindsight is 2020. So we'll have to wait and see how all this stuff plays out. But let me know your thoughts, ladies and gentlemen, on this Seattle Kraken team. What are your thoughts? Where do you expect to see them place? I predict them to be a wild card team next year. Well, let me know your thoughts on this team, the roster, and everything that transpired tonight with the expansion draft. Thank you so much for watching this video. Let me know all your thoughts down in the comment section. As always, please subscribe regardless of the team that you root for. I'm just a biased Jets fan sharing his thoughts on all things hockey related. Peace, love, and positivity to all you beautiful people out there. I will see you guys in the next video. Go Jets, go. Go Kraken, go. Stay tuned for the entry draft live stream, which will be starting at 4:30 Pacific on Friday. I'll see you guys there. Turn on notifications to be here right when it starts. See you guys on Friday. Have a great rest of your day. Go Jets, go.